Let me go over here. Most of you that have been to my classes before are familiar with this diagram that I use to show this is spirit, God, and me. This is the spirit that is made in the image and likeness of God, and that's who you are. We are all made in the image and likeness of God, therefore we are spirit, we have a God self, and we have, that is us. It's our eternal self, it's our real self. Now, spirit, in order to express, devises a soul through which it can express. And the soul is not permanent, incidentally. It, at some point in higher consciousness, the soul will remove itself, or it will become pure spirit. I think that would be probably the better way to put it. And the soul forms our bodies in our mother's womb. Okay? And it will exactly match whatever the need of the soul has in this life experience. So some people come out with not all limbs, and some come out with damaged limbs, and so on and so forth. But the idea is that the soul has planned that because it will give that soul the opportunity it needs to rise above and to find its God self and begin to operate life from this point of view. And this is what the whole class is about, that we're going to be talking about. Metaphysics is beyond the physical, also beyond the literal. It's employing laws that transcend physical means, that are above physical means. Okay? And the law is the method that spirit, or God, if you will, follows in making things. And we have the world of cause and effect, thought and manifestation. We're going to be talking a lot about that. God creates out of himself, not out of nothing. Therefore, everything you see, hear, taste, touch, or smell is God appearing as such, or spirit appearing as such, if you will. What holds everything together is the magnetic force of God's love. I'd like you to think about that for a few minutes. That may be a challenging statement to some of you, that everything we see out here is a form of spirit in a form that we can see with our physical eyes, that we can feel, touch, smell. But it is formed out of spirit. That is its base, the same as our base is spirit. Okay? The law of cause and effect is as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Very simple. Important. The law is absolutely impersonal. It creates in your experience exactly a mental equivalent of your dominant thought. The law doesn't change. God doesn't change. Spirit doesn't change. We change it. We take the beautiful laws, thoughts held in mind, produce after their kind, is a basic law on unity. We'll be talking more about that. But we can use it any way we want. The law isn't going to change. If you or I put in negative thoughts, then we can expect negative circumstances and events in our lives. It's that simple. God still loves you, or me, regardless of how much we violate the law to a negative circumstance. But we have the choice. God has given us the choice. And this, we need to remember that the laws are absolutely impersonal. They don't look at me and say, gee, you've done pretty good today, I'll give you an extra blessing. That doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. God doesn't love me any more than he loves you, or any more than he loves the person in jail. This is what God loves, what he created, is the spiritual being that you are. God doesn't see all of the messes that you and I get in as human beings, all the negativity that we get involved with. God only sees us as whole, perfect, and complete. because that's the way we are created, and that's how we are at our spiritual level. So now, God's done everything that He can for us. He's made you and me whole, perfect, and complete. Can't make any more. God can't make you any more spiritual than you are. Can't do it. It's impossible. See, there are some things that's impossible to God. But what we can do is we can begin to open our minds to this fantastic power that's within each one of us. We can use all of it, none of it, part of it. Again, it's our choice. So we have to learn more about it. Here's some affirmative realizations that we can use to help condition our mind. I will control my thoughts. I will think thoughts of truth. I will think thoughts of faith. I will think thoughts of love. Now think in your own life how we violate those. Me, along with everybody else. We look across the seas and we see all of this upheaval and uproar, and sometimes we have very little love for people because we're looking at the human outer conditions. We're not looking at the spiritual being that is in there, that is precious, that is beautiful. They may not express it, but we need to look through the appearance. I will think thoughts of peace. I will think thoughts of harmony. I keep the law, and the law keeps me. I don't know why I didn't spell that right. If you will. I obey the law, and the law obeys me. Now, this is a very important thing that came out of 1 John 3:2. Beloved, we are now, this moment, God's children. See? In some translations, it says, now we are sons of God. Same thing. It does not yet appear what we shall be. And what this means is, behold, now we are perfect children of God. Every one of us is. But it does not appear yet how we're going to express it out here, you see, in our humanness. We're not always expressing the God self. And that's part of our growth. That's how we grow. Right here, I don't make the same mistakes twice. I'm too busy making new mistakes. And that's the way it should be. I earn or learn from every experience. So be kind to yourself, as I tell all my classes, when you do make an error. And look at it as this is part of my growth. This is an opportunity for me to learn, to grow, and to change. For those of you that are interested, we're using this book, The Law of Mind in Action by Fenwick Holmes. Let me just read a little bit on the preface of it. It says, this wonderful world in which we live appears at times to be chaotic, pure chance, and a complete mystery. And yet there is an invisible thread running through each circumstance, situation, and relationship. And that invisible thread is the Spirit of God. Think about that for a moment. If I were not already convinced of such, I became a believer as my participation in the reprinting of this life-changing classic, Revelation of Truth Unfolded. Now, this is a foreword which was written by Reverend Margie Ann Nicola, Unity by the Sea, a Unity minister. Also, the foreword was written by Catherine Ponder, Unity Church Worldwide in Palm Springs, one of the great Unity teachers and authors of Unity. In the foreword, she says, Fenwick Lindsay Holmes was a multifaceted minister, author, and educator who lectured for more than 50 years on the timeless truths of the universe. Fenwick Holmes is the brother of Ernest Holmes. Ernest Holmes is the founder of Religious Science, one of the great New Thought churches or religions, and I don't particularly like the word religion. But they used to, when they first started out, they were billed as the Holmes brothers. And they spoke into great crowds all over the country, talking about new thought. And incidentally, Ernest Holmes was also taught by Emma Curtis Hopkins, who taught the Fillmores and who came out of Christian Science, Mary Baker Eddy's. And many of you know the story of Emma Curtis Hopkins, so I'm not going to dwell on that. But anyway, Catherine Ponder says, yet I also feel that in order to properly comment on the man and his works, it is appropriate to also speak of his brother's works, Dr. Ernest Holmes, since the two men not only gave so much to the world through their humanitarian contributions, but also because they gave so much to each other. They worked together for quite a long time, and then they went their separate ways. Fenwick was not part of the religious science movement. He was on his own, doing his own thing, and that was perfectly okay. But he certainly proved the truth of that old adage, there is no competition in spirit. What blesses one blesses all. And this is the consciousness which both of these individuals had, and which you will find as we go through this book. In the introduction it says, there is a law of healing so plain that even a child can understand it, so fundamental that the ablest mind has never yet thought through all the facts and phenomena of life that rest upon it. It is the purpose of this book and this class to make this law clear. What law is he talking about? Well, he's talking about all of God's laws, but primarily thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, which is the law of mind action. The dominant thoughts that we have, will produce a mental equivalent. And so if we have the same thought, it does not mean we will produce the same kind of event or circumstance in our lives. Let's say we all had the thought of hate, for example. Now, it will produce different things in different people's lives based upon the needs of the soul. Based upon the needs of your soul. So you will have your own exquisite circumstances, and all of them are, in your experience, to help you to find the spiritual being that you are, the God self. And remember that Jesus was very clear. He said the kingdom of God is within you. So let's stop looking outside of ourselves for God. God is not lost. God is with you. And there's no place you and I can go that God is not with us. The greatest power in the world is the power of thought. The power of thought. For it is creative mind in action. What it's talking about is nothing exists in the universe that first didn't start in thought. Even the thought of the Creator. It first began with a thought. This is how you and I operate in this life, is through our thought and feeling, which we call consciousness. And once you can, or I can, whoever the case may be, once we can begin to tap into spirit within us, we open ourselves up to divine thought, to divine ideas. Because your mind, part of your mind is divine mind. It's God mind. See, there are three parts of your mind. There's only one mind, but there's three different parts. The conscious, which we use out here, the subconscious, which we use in the soulic level, and superconscious, or divine consciousness, if you will. And all of these reside within us. They're all part of us. So since an act of will is an act of mind, we concern ourselves with the activity of a creative mind. So we begin to create things. We begin to control our thoughts, our way of thinking. And we begin to put out from within, okay, greater thoughts than we had yesterday. More loving thoughts, more creative thoughts. And this is how we begin to change our way of living, is through our mind, through our thoughts. You don't have love and give love to someone else without first a thought. Think about that. Many of the thoughts emanate from our subconscious because we have put them in there and they are stored. They are stored. All of the thoughts you've ever had are stored in here. Now, a lot of them, thank God, don't come out very often, but they're there. They're there. Experiences are all recorded here, and you carry them with you. The other day I was driving down the road, and all of a sudden a thought popped into my mind. I don't know why, but of something that I did like 8 or 9 years old that to me was very shameful. And I felt the same emotions all over again. I think everybody has done that sort of thing in their life. And what happens is something triggers that, and we pop in there and we pull that out. And then we have the same emotions that you had when you were 8 years old. Exactly the same. You live it over again. The trick is to be able to recognize where it came from, what it is, has nothing to do with who you are now. And you can release it and let it go. But you know, so many people live in the past of what has taken place in the past that they're shameful or guilty about, and they won't let it go. Anybody been there besides me? Okay. You see, we won't let it go. So what happens is we begin to fill our heart and mind and thoughts with thoughts that are destructive to us. I'm bad. I'm no good. That's not true, because this is you. There's nothing bad or about your spiritual being. It's whole, perfect, and complete. But we live out here so much that we kind of lose track of who and what we are. And we're not expressing it the way we want to. We must also, therefore, teach the way. W-A-Y. It is to teach this way that the Bible was written, that Jesus lived and taught. This way has been known for many centuries, but has always been taught in terms of the understanding of the day in which the teacher lived. Now, we went through this a lot in the last class that I taught on the parables. Jesus told these parables in ways that people of his day could understand, using a grain of wheat, for example, or an ear of corn. All of these things are making of bread, the expansion of bread, and all of these things were very, very real to the people that he talked to. They could identify with that. However, not many people really caught the real meaning. See, many people never got beyond the literal, and so they lost the goodness of the teaching of Jesus. I'm over on XIV. What is that? 14? You don't like that, huh? It is clear to us that it is natural to use the power of mind, and that the greatest happiness results from its exercise. But of course, that's only when we're using our mind correctly for our benefit. See, God never put us in this life and left us alone. God is with us always, guiding us and directing us according to our consciousness. He is not going to overrule our negative thoughts at all, because he said, I love you so much, you all have freedom of choice. My love will never change. Yours may, but mind will never. The law will never change. It says we must think, and the results of thinking are rich and fruitful. And that every thought that you have is a prayer. Think about that statement for a moment. And so I ask you, what are you praying for? What are you praying for? Are you praying for a consciousness that's weak and no good? A consciousness that's filled with shame and guilt? See, none of those things are part of our heritage. Those are man-made ideas. In the book of Isaiah, it says that God had made man upright, meaning full of spirit, truth. But man has sought out many inventions, and our inventions are fear, hate, and all the rest of the negativity. And for some reason we seem to want to hang on to those things instead of hanging on to the pearls of wisdom that Jesus gave us. How life becomes health, how love becomes happiness, and how wisdom becomes wealth, we want to know. All of us want to know, how in the world can I have the health, the happiness, and be creative? I know that somehow I have this power within me to do it, but how can I reach it? How can I get to it? What can I do to tap into this magnificent power of God? What can I do? Well, first of all, of course, we can begin to change our mind. Now, that's in the Bible, it calls repent. It just means change your mind. Change the way you've been thinking. And if the way you have been thinking has not brought you happiness or peace or love, then you need to change. And this is one of the great lessons in life that we have to learn. Because generally speaking, the world out here is looking for someone else to change. You know, if you'll change, oh, I'll be so much happier. Well, that's a lot of baloney. Because we have to change ourselves. It is only us that can tap in to the Spirit of God, the goodness, the love, the peace, the joy, the harmony, and the order. It's all within us. And we can press it out any time that we so choose. It says, mind first produces thought and then reacts to it to become that which it has thought. And this is the whole law of creation. We have a thought, we react to it. Now think about this. We react to the thoughts that we have. I'm no good. I'm lower than a worm in the dust. And you see, I believed that totally at one time, and I acted the same way. Because that's the way I saw myself. I couldn't act any other way. So we have to begin to change our mind. We have to begin to work with these ideas. We begin to react not to something, but from that calm, peaceful center right here. React from the Spirit of God within you. Try it in your business. See how it works. It's not easy, guys. I'll tell you that. Because basically we've been taught to strike out, to reach out, to cuff somebody, and I mean hit them upside the head or whatever we do. And what we're teaching here is let's react from that calm, peaceful center. It produces fantastic, exceptional results. But you have to try it first. Mind creates what it thinks. The many forms pass out of the one mind, but each form has a corresponding thought that produces and sustains it. See, all of the divine ideas come out of here. And they're constantly coming through all of the time. But we have to tune into it, to understand it, to know it. And I've given this illustration so many times, but it's perfect. A radio station sends out a signal. God sends out a signal. Okay? But what happens with the radio? You've got to tune in otherwise you don't know it exists. So if you are not attuned to the Spirit of God within you, if you know nothing about that, you miss it all. You miss it all. And you won't be using it very much. Get the idea? Mind in action is, therefore, also the law. Law is the principle on which mind works. Every primary cause is in the mind, and the effect is simply the form which thought has taken. We have the cause, and the cause is always God ideas. But the effect is after we have changed those divine ideas. Like love, unconditional love, no strings attached. Can you do it? Can you let that beautiful idea make its effect without changing it? Health is the same way. God's idea is perfect health, and that's what you are. I don't care what you're manifesting at this point. You are perfect health. Absolutely. No question about it. Now you may say, no, I'm not, and you may begin to put thoughts in and cancel this out and change it to illness. Oh, the doctor just told me that I had whatever it is. And he's the expert, right? And so we tend to believe that, and we tend to throw out any higher power within us to overcome that. There have been great healings in this church. Well, all over. Not just in this church. Healings, and how do they happen? Through change of mind. Change of mind. Recognizing that there is a power greater than anything in this world, and that's God. And you got it. You got God, if you will, or God's got you. Thought acts upon mind. I'm on top of 15. Thought acts upon mind to produce things. Since things are made out of mind, they are simply thought in form. In form. But they maintain form in reality only so long as they are sustained by the thought. Let me repeat that. They are only maintained. The form is only maintained as long as you sustain the thought. Let's talk about fear, terror. You only will experience that in your life as long as you hold that thought. Once the thought is dissipated, the form disappears. Try walking through a graveyard at night. I did this as a kid. And every form that you see out there, in your mind, you're afraid, and it looks like somebody's waiting there to get you. Now, it might be a stump, it might be a headstone, or something like that. But the minute that you realize that it's not anything to be feared, the fear dissipates. It's all done up here in the mind. It's what you perceive of life that is fearful. And we need to look through any appearance out there. Whether it's the IRS banging at your door or whatever it may be. You need to look through that appearance and behold the Christ, God, in everything, because God is in everything. Man's control of his own body, happiness, circumstances, and environment by the thoughts which he thinks. This book is written to teach the one simple law of mind, the law, which anyone can understand and use, and which, if used, will give freedom, joy, health, supply, and peace to the one who uses it. It says this is a big claim, but it is supported by the Bible and by the experience of thousands now living. As we begin to understand more about who and what we are, as we begin to understand a little more of what God is, many of us have been taught that God is vengeful, God destroys cities. I mean, I can show you that in the Bible, and you've probably read it. God is vengeful, destroys people, and so on and so forth. And we got all of that through the Old Testament because that is the way that people saw God. And it was written through an Eastern mind. And we're still teaching it today. Not here, thank goodness. But it's still being taught in the world today. And these are part of the things that need to be overcome because we begin to think in terms that this is the truth for me. And then we begin to live that truth that we accept. Okay. This book is designed also to stimulate our own thinking and investigation. And in all of my classes, if I can just make you begin to think for yourself, don't ever believe any words that I tell you. Because you can go right to your source here and decide if this is correct and true for me. I counseled with a lady this week, and her biggest problem was that I don't read the Bible because everybody's got a different interpretation. And she's correct. Everybody does have a different sex and so on and so forth. But I told her to go ahead and begin to read from the spiritual center within. Let the Spirit talk to you. Tap into that power. Let it tell you what the truth is for your soul. What your soul can accept. All right, and there's truths underneath truths. As you begin to understand one truth, always remember there's a deeper one below it. And a deeper one below that. But that's part of our progression. This is how we learn and grow. So we begin to take one truth that we already know and begin to live it in our life. Not just up here, but begin to live it. And then as we live that truth, a new and deeper meaning will become apparent to us. And we can begin to live that. And then as we do that, a deeper meaning will be revealed to us as we are able to handle it, you see. Because a lot of the truths that we teach here, many people will reject. And that's okay. Because their soul is not to the point yet where they can accept that. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. That's just where they are in consciousness, and that will help them to know how to use the truth that they already have. They may not accept the particular one that you have accepted, and you try to force it down their throat. They say, no, that's not right. It's not in my experience. And so we go ahead with teaching ourselves. See, this is important. And because someone doesn't agree with you, don't shun them. Just understand that they're not ready yet for that particular truth, which is evident to you, but not to the other person as yet. And that's okay. Look at, turn over the page, and it doesn't have it's just before 1 metaphysics. It says, God is creative spirit, everywhere present, eternally here. Okay, that's this right here. In him is all life, intelligence, goodness, holiness, and truth. And that's within you. He knows no want. He suffers no pain. He is unlimited in time, space, and circumstance. That's you. We don't act like it, but that's us. Okay? You are whole, perfect, and complete here because you are made in the image and likeness of God. That's who you are. And what are you? You're a perfect child of God. It just does not appear yet how you or I are going to express that wholeness in our life. At this point, we suffer no pain. Everything is perfect. But by the time we get out here, we're in a world of experiences. And sometimes we get attached to the worldly things out here to the exclusion of spirit. It's wonderful. God put all of these things for us to enjoy. It's good to enjoy good things, a good home, a good car, have lots of money. That's fine, but not to the exclusion of spirit. Many people get a ton of money and they just say, I'm there. I don't need God anymore. But pretty soon something happens in their lives because that consciousness will bring something to them to say, hey, look, you're not there yet. And you need to work on this particular part of your experience. Let's go to page 3, if you will. Up near the top, in fact, the first paragraph. Our subsequent studies will reveal that the creative mind in man and the creative mind in the universe are not two, but rather one. See, I told you there's one mind, but there's 3 parts as far as we're concerned. Conscious, subconscious, and superconscious. But there's only one mind. The value of this understanding is that we may use universal creative forces to secure the good we desire without feeling that we have to create. We do not make the law, we use it. And it does our work for us. If we're using the law correctly. Remember what Jesus said, I myself can do nothing. The Father within is he that doeth the works. This is the idea. We can cruise right through life, and we're made to do that if we understand the law. If we will use the law correctly, we begin to change our thoughts, our way of thinking, and begin to see ourselves as a channel for God to work through. God works through you, through your soul, and then through the human part of us. All healing, accordingly, is divine. It is done unto us even as we will. It is not done by us. Healing is not done by us. Many times healing is done through us, but not by us. And some people get caught up in that idea. Oh, look what I did. I healed that person. Never happened. Never happened. The healer is not the source, but the channel. Not the light, but the window. Not the electricity, but the wire. He is the teacher who will guide to the truth until the student learns the way for himself. Physician, heal thyself. That's what Jesus said. We all have that presence and power once we begin to understand that we are something more than we appear to be. Far more. Fantastically more than we appear to be. And we have that right and responsibility to express or press out our God self at our highest and best. I'm going to move over to page 5, the last paragraph. It says, it is the work of metaphysics to show that you can put yourself into harmony with this one originating source and work in unison with the creative purpose and thus be able to accomplish all things. The Bible says I can do all things or accomplish all things in the Christ. This is the Christ also. What we call, Jesus called it the Father within. We call it the Christ. Same thing. It's the spiritual being that you are. And you are the Christ. Now you can't go down to the Baptist church and tell them that because they'll throw you out. I'm just using Baptists as probably any of them will throw you out, or they've got little fellows with white coats that'll come around and get you. But you get the idea. You know that you are a spiritual being, and you know that you have powers that you haven't even touched yet. All the experiences of life are for one purpose, and one purpose only, is to help you or me to find the Christ. Whatever experience you're going through right now, that's the total reason for it, is to give you an opportunity. Doesn't mean you'll take it. It means that you have an opportunity through this effect, if you will, out here, where that we have, you and I, have made some wrong thoughts, okay, or allowed wrong thoughts to become an effect out here, whatever it may be. Okay? And we have to then, we have the effect to go through, but it's only there to help us understand where we have made wrong turns. And that doesn't make us bad, not a bit. It just means that we are human beings, we're actually spiritual beings going through human experiences, right? To learn, to grow, to change, to unfold as a beautiful, perfect child of God. Let's have our sharing, shall we? And then we've got some time to finish up. And so we just take this time now, Father, to bring forth the highest and best from each one of us, knowing that our gift is part of what God has given us, or what we have accepted from the abundance of God. So we use this gift as a symbol to symbolize the lavish abundance of God, that we recognize that we are tapped into that lavish abundance. And so we use this gift as we bless it and allow it to go from us joyfully to do wonderful work out into the universal. And we know that a mental equivalent of that blessing comes back to us, shaken together, pressed down, and running over. And so we are truly, truly grateful as we affirm it all in the name and through the power of Jesus Christ. And so it is. Amen. You will just go ahead and move it back, please. Okay. Let's go to page 9 if you have the book. It's called The Law. The first principle of this law is that of the universal presence of intelligence, that we live, move, and have our being in a vast sea of life, both visible and invisible, that this intelligent life is not only around us, but is in us. So you and I are living right now, having our being in the consciousness of God. All of this is the consciousness of God. We'll all perceive it a little differently, probably. But everything, the air, all of the things we see, all come from Spirit. And it is Spirit appearing as whatever it is that we're aware of. That this intelligent life is not only around us but in us. Even more, it is not only in, around, and in us, but it is the substance as well of which all things, including our bodies, are composed. Our bodies are composed out of spirit through thought. Okay? At some point, it will be released. We will be released from this particular physical body that we're in, and soul and spirit continues to move on. Soul continues to learn, to grow, and to change. I was told, and maybe many of you were in my early Christian days, that even a drunk who at the last moment accepted Jesus as his Savior would go to heaven and everything would be perfect. And I had a real problem with that. I thought, well, if this is the truth, then why shouldn't I live a real raunchy life right up until the end and then quickly? And it just didn't make sense to me. But it's one of the things I had to relearn. And but this is part of realizing that our bodies are made out of spirit in some form. And that's why healing is so great, is because we can tap in and begin to see our cells and tissues responding to the healing power of God, because they're one and the same. And we do it through our thought, through our visualization process. And you'd be surprised at the number of healings that are done in that way. Once, it's not that whether it's you or I praying with the person and helping them to see this and understand it, it's when they catch it themselves, when they see it themselves and believe it down here, everything begins to change in their life. Some people cannot do that, but that's not a criticism either. That's just here, as Earth and planets and so on existed and does exist on the spiritual level as well. And in the creation process, it became manifest through the thought of God. Since spirit was and is all, it had nothing else than itself out of which to make the world. Right here. It therefore had to fashion a substance for its own body, the universe, out of itself or spirit. Therefore all life must manifest the life of spirit, since it proceeds from it. That's the life of a tree. There is life in everything. We can see it with our high-powered electronic microscopes. Even in stones there is movement on an atomic level. It's difficult for us to think in terms that they are living things, but they do have a life. They are made out of spirit, and they are connected to the one spirit. We see, therefore, that this universal intelligence is also creative. It is the power that makes things and is the intelligence that molds original substance and holds it in form. So we can do a great many things with our mind because we are tapped in, we are connected with divine mind, God mind. Think about that. Every one of us is. We have that connection. We may not want to use it. We have that choice. But once we learn that we can be open channels for this beautiful presence within us to express itself through our daily activities, you'll find that magnificent things begin to happen in your life. But it has to go from here down to here. See, we can think about a thing, we can understand a thing intellectually, but until we begin to live it, that's where the changes occur. Once we live, see? Once you live the thoughts of love. Is it easy? Hadn't been for me. I don't know about the rest of you. Is it really Easy to control our thoughts the way we want to? Not easy. Possible. You bet it is. And the more you work with it, the closer you come all the time. So that the times that you're not thinking thoughts of love and faith and truth are very, very small. Because what happens when you begin to live this, you immediately know where you are. And you can see yourself immediately if you begin to stray off this path that you have chosen. Then you'll begin to understand the thoughts that you're having, and you can begin to discard them because they are not profitable. They are not profitable. And we have the thoughts of shame and guilt, and I guess those are the major ones that I've come across with people. And they're not profitable at all. They make you sickly out here. They make you weak, which you are not, but you will begin to express all of that guilt and shame brings to you. And remember, we talked about things coming up from the past. And if you'll think about it, in talking with people, you'll find that many people are living in the past, and they will not let it go. They have been told by, quote, experts, fathers, mothers, priests, ministers, that they're no good. And the problem is that we have a tendency to accept that. And we carry it with us all throughout our life if we're not sharp enough to understand what's going on. And there was a time in my life when I was not sharp enough to even understand that. And probably we've all had that experience. Okay? But to recognize who and what you are and to begin to live from that consciousness, that is the key that we want to begin to work with throughout this class, throughout our life. On page 11, about midway, it says, "We therefore perceive that whatever we think must make a greater or lesser impression on creative mind." Excuse me. And that when we consciously use our knowledge, we make an image of the thing we desire. Then we present it, the image, to the great creative intelligence which begins to act upon our suggestion to bring forth our good and visible form. Like affirmations. Three things that have to happen to make an affirmation take. One is that you say it. Second is that you image in your mind what you're saying. And third, and most important, is that you create the feeling that it's already done. It's already here. So if you're, and this you do through the law of mind action, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So we build the thought, we build the image, we build the feeling of what we are saying is truth for us. Excuse me. If we can say, "I am whole, perfect, and complete," and begin to live it that way. At the bottom of page 11, it is seeking its own self-expression, since there can be no other motive of creation at all. God always is seeking to express himself or herself, whatever you want to call it. This is what God always wants to do. But again, he's given you and me freedom of thought. Freedom of choice. You don't have to. You can block it, as we do many times. We block it with feelings and thoughts of guilt. And it doesn't have to be a guilt from something you did just now. It could be 20, 30 years ago. And you bring that, as my illustration was, you can bring it up here and you can block the Spirit of God from expressing through you. You have that right. You have that power. It may not be what you want, but depending on how you have accepted things in the past and how difficult or easy is it for you to change your thinking, that's going to be the key. Accordingly, it stands back of us as the source of our life, love, and wisdom. You see, the body right here, this body that you're looking at right here, has no life of itself. Think about that. It has no life. It is the life of God here, this life, that is animating this physical body. This life never dies. Sometimes it's withdrawn from the body, and of course the body is nothing. It has no life of its own. It's kind of contrary to what we believed before. But it has no life. All life comes from God. And because of the connection we have, since we are made in that image and likeness of God, and since all of our body has been created out of spirit, but it appears as a physical body. It's an appearance. And it takes its life from spirit, from within. So your life will never die. It can't. It's impossible. You can only change your form of existence. That's all. There is one other feature of the law which must not be overlooked. This is what we may term the personal side of Spirit's activity. While as law it acts in the manner we have just described, and while so far as the individual will is concerned, it does not act contrary to our purposes, still it also acts as a law of tendency. It tends to the production of higher manifestations of itself in individual expression and form. It's always tending to do that. But it does not overcome our own consciousness. We can halt it. We can stop it any time that we begin to think other than the perfect nature of God. And we're human, and we do. Again, it's no criticism at all. It just tells us exactly where we are, and what we need to be is to begin to know that we live and move and have our being in the Spirit of God. And I of myself can do nothing. The Father within, it is He that doeth the works. This is what we are looking for, is understanding impersonal law. It will not change for you. You cannot change the law. You can only change your use of the law. This is very, very important for you to begin to understand that the law of God is what keeps you and I moving. Now, we may move in different directions because we still have control over our thoughts. Right here. And it's up to us to begin to use it in a constructive way that will help your soul to learn, to grow, and to change. And every soul has different needs. Please try to understand that. And that's why it's in unity, we don't try to change anyone, because we have no idea what that soul needs to experience. We are only there to help those that want to be helped as best as we can. Let's just take a moment. And Father, Mother God, again, we are grateful for this wonderful, powerful mind that we have. And so we go through each day and we remember and realize who and what we are, that we are perfect children of God, yet it does not yet appear how we are going to express that wholeness and goodness. And so we are thankful for the teachings of Jesus Christ, for we know that those teachings come directly from the Godhead. And we open our hearts and minds to our spiritualness and allow it to teach us the way in which we are to go. And it is in that consciousness of love and peace that we do affirm this prayer in the name and through the power of Jesus Christ. And so it is. Amen. Okay.